There's a night that doesn't begin with words. It begins with a pulse, a beat that appears in the darkness, and before you can even think about it, it's already inside your chest. There's no melody to introduce it, no voice to announce it. Just that mechanical heartbeat, steady, relentless, moving forward without asking permission. Lights flash in fractions of a second. Bodies move without choreography, guided by something that can't be explained but can be felt with absolute clarity. This is not entertainment. This is something else. It's a state. It's a journey that starts with your feet on the ground and ends somewhere that doesn't have a name yet. That is techno before it became a genre, before it became a label, before anyone put it on a list or filed it into a database. Techno is the feeling that the future can also be danced. To understand how it came to exist, you have to travel to a city that in the 1980s was processing its own crisis through a mixture of rage, creativity, and urgency. Detroit had been the industrial heart of the United States, the city where cars were built, where factories set the rhythm of everyday life. But when that industry began to collapse, when plants shut down and neighborhoods emptied out, Detroit didn't disappear, it transformed. And in that transformation, among abandoned spaces and the energy of a generation that refused to give up, something new was born. A group of young Black Americans started experimenting with machines that no one else was taking seriously. Drum machines, synthesizers, sequencers. Equipment capable of producing sounds that no conventional instrument could generate. They didn't use them to copy what already existed. They used them to imagine what didn't exist yet. Inspired by European electronic music, by the funk of the 70s, by science fiction, and by the feeling of living in a city that seemed haunted by the future and the past at the same time, they built a sound unlike anything else. A sound that was cold and burning at once, mechanical and deeply human. What those pioneers understood, almost instinctively, was that technology didn't have to be the enemy of expression. It could become its new language. Machines weren't going to replace emotion, they were going to give it a different shape, a shape built from frequencies, from layers of sound that stack and separate, from rhythms that never rest but never exhaust. Techno wasn't born as background music, it was born as a statement. And at the center of that statement was something that, at first glance, looks like a paradox: repetition. To someone coming from other musical traditions, repetition can feel like a limitation. Why listen to the same rhythmic pattern for minutes, for hours? But repetition in techno is not a lack of ideas. It's a precise tool, almost scientific, designed to do something specific to the body and the mind. When a pattern repeats with enough intensity and duration, it stops being new information and becomes an environment. You no longer listen to it the way you listen to a song with a verse and a chorus. You inhabit it. The brain, saturated from following the same pulse, begins to release control. The perception of time shifts. Minutes expand or compress. The body takes over. That's not accident or coincidence. That is sound design in service of an experience that can't be reached any other way. Techno producers understood they were working with something similar to what the rituals of many cultures had discovered long before. That a sustained rhythm has the power to alter states of consciousness, to create communion among those who share it, to temporarily dissolve the edges of the individual self. The dance floor wasn't a stage or a performance. It was a space where that experience could happen collectively. Different bodies, different stories, surrendered to the same pulse, something deeply egalitarian in its logic. But techno was more than rhythm. It was also texture, space, and progression. Unlike genres built around recognizable melodies, techno works with what lives beneath the melody. The weight of the bass, the metallic shimmer of a synthetic sound that appears and disappears. The calculated silences that make the return of the kick feel even more physical. Every element has a function. Nothing is wasted. The economy of techno is part of its power. That precision doesn't mean coldness. It's a common mistake to read techno as emotionally distant or disconnected. What it does is handle emotion differently, not through lyrics, not through a melody that rises and falls in familiar arcs, but through accumulation, tension, and release. A techno track can build pressure for several minutes, and when it finally breaks open, it produces something very close to catharsis. It's not the emotion of a love song. It's the emotion of pure movement, of momentum, of feeling something inside the body pushing forward without knowing exactly where. When that sound left Detroit and travelled, it found fertile ground in places that were also processing their own transformations. In Berlin, especially after reunification, the city's empty spaces became ideal territory for techno to grow its own identity. Abandoned factories, bunkers, nameless venues that opened when the rest of the city was asleep. Berlin techno inherited Detroit's pulse but added its own darkness, its own solemnity, a sense that something sacred was taking place in spaces that the day before had been pure ruin. From there, the genre fractured into variants. Industrial techno, more abrasive and aggressive. Minimal techno, which pushed sonic economy to its furthest limits. Ambient techno, which stretched its edges toward almost contemplative sound landscapes. Each variant was a response to a different context, a different city, a different generation that found in this music a way to express something that didn't fit anywhere else. And yet, across all those variants, the core remained. The pulse, the machine, repetition as journey. What techno did on the map of electronic music can't be measured by popularity alone, or by the number of festivals that carry its name. Its influence lives in the way it changed how people understand what a song can be, what a rhythm can do, how the body relates to sound in a shared space. Before techno, the idea that a music without lyrics, without a singable melody, without a recognizable narrative structure, could draw thousands of people and move them for hours seemed unlikely. After techno, that model wasn't just possible, it was powerful. It also left a mark on how producers think about composition. The idea of building layers, of treating time as material, of designing an experience rather than simply writing a song, comes in large part from what techno established as possible. Genres that came after it, even some that seem to have nothing to do with techno, carry its fingerprints in the way they think about rhythm and sonic space. There's something about techno that still provokes resistance in people hearing it for the first time from the outside. It seems arid, repetitive in the wrong way, like it has nowhere to go. But that resistance dissolves the moment it's experienced from the inside, from the floor, from a body in motion inside the sound. Because techno is not a music that gives itself up immediately, it's a music that requires surrender. And when that surrender happens, what seemed like empty repetition becomes something close to meditation in motion. Techno proved that the future didn't necessarily arrive with a melody to announce it. It arrived with a pulse, with a frequency that passed through the walls of an abandoned factory and turned concrete into something alive. It arrived with machines that weren't trying to sound human, but were instead revealing a new way of being human. It arrived with the idea that dancing wasn't a break from real life, but one of its most real moments. That's why, decades after its first beats in Detroit, techno remains relevant not as a relic, but as a living proposition. Because its central question was never historical. It has always been present. What can sound do with time, with the body, with space, and with the people who inhabit it? The answer is still the same as it was at the beginning. A beat in the darkness, a pulse moving forward, and bodies discovering that the future, sometimes, is already happening beneath their feet.